Massive questions today. One that, well, humanity's wrestled with forever, really. You
Absolutely.
know that feeling? Maybe you're looking up at a clear night sky and suddenly you feel incredibly small, but also full of wonder.
Mm, that sense of awe.
Exactly. And then the big questions hit you, like who actually made all this? Who's in charge of, well, everything, the weather, life, the chaos.
And the biggest one, maybe?
Yeah, what happens to me after it's all over?
That impulse, that looking up and asking why, it's arguably universal, isn't it? It cuts across all cultures, all time.
It really does. It seems so persistent.
And that's what our sources show, spanning, well, basically all of human history. We see it in the earliest cave paintings, those ritualistic scenes trying to make sense of nature.
Right, trying to connect with or appease those forces.
All the way through to, say, the incredible architecture of ancient temples or modern mosques and cathedrals. The drive to reach for something more is just always there.
Okay, so that brings us to the core mission for this deep dive. It's important to state this up front, right?
Crucial. We were not debating whether God exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's theology, philosophy maybe, but not our focus today.
No, we're looking at this from a different angle, more like anthropology, psychology.
Our goal is analytical. We want to investigate why. Why does humanity, seemingly everywhere and always, reach for this idea of God? What fundamental human needs does it satisfy?
Needs that could be historical, psychological, maybe social.
Exactly. All of those. What is belief doing for us?
And we've mapped out a kind of journey for you today. We'll start right at the beginning, looking at the historical roots, early humans, lightning, needing explanation.
The origins, yeah.
Then we'll sketch out the different ways humans have actually defined the divine. It's not all the same, obviously.
Not at all. And a whole landscape of belief.
Then we'll dive into the psychology. Why does the mind find the idea of God so, well, compelling, so necessary, maybe?
The comfort factor, the moral framework.
Right. And finally, we'll look at today. In our super scientific high-tech age, why does this need still seem to persist, even with AI and space travel?
It's really an exploration of that human spiritual impulse. Where did it come from? What does it do? And why is it still around?
So let's start at the beginning then, the historical genesis.
Let's rewind. Way back.
Okay, picture this. Thousands, tens of thousands of years ago. You're an early human. Smart, adaptable, but also incredibly vulnerable.
Utterly fragile in the face of nature. Yeah.
You're living in a world full of immediate dangers. There's no science to explain why the sky suddenly flashes and booms, or why the earth shakes, or why rain stops falling for weeks.
No germ theory, no meteorology, no geology. Life felt fundamentally random, often hostile. A flood could just wipe you out. A drought meant starvation.
So when lightning strikes, or a volcano erupts, that's not just weather or geology, is it? From their perspective.
No way. It must have felt like powerful, conscious forces acting out. Maybe angry, maybe displeased beings.
Powerful, unpredictable beings.
Right, so the sources strongly suggest the initial function of belief, the first gods, emerged for very practical reasons.
Like what?
It was a way to explain the terrifying unknown. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to manage the overwhelming fear that comes with it.
Ah, so if you can name the force controlling the rain, maybe you can figure out how to ask it for rain or stop it from flooding you.
Precisely. It gives you a framework, a potential avenue for influence, even if it's just through ritual or sacrifice. Appeasement.
Okay, so that leads us pretty directly to polytheism, doesn't it? Believing in many gods.
It does. And these early gods were often very specific, very functional, tied directly to the natural elements that govern survival.
Like the sun, the rain.
The harvest, the sea, the wind, whatever was most critical in your specific environment.
You see that clearly in Mesopotamia, right? Between the rivers, always worried about floods.
Absolutely. Their gods reflected that constant anxiety. In Enlil, the god of wind and storms, incredibly powerful, incredibly feared, because a storm could literally destroy their world.
You weren't asking Enlil for deep moral insights back then.
No, you were asking Enlil, please don't flatten our village this year. It was a very practical, almost transactional relationship.
And Egypt, the Nile, the sun.
A perfect example of environmental dependency shaping belief. Their whole civilization revolved around the Nile's predictable flood and the sun's daily journey. So Ra, the sun god.
He becomes central, sailing across the sky every day.
It wasn't just abstract worship. It was tied to the rhythm of their existence, the very basis of their survival.
Then you get to ancient Greece, and the gods seem, well, more human-like, more flawed.
Definitely more anthropomorphic. Zeus, Poseidon, Athena. They ruled specific domains, sure, but they were also jealous, petty, prone to intervention in human affairs.
Almost mirroring the human drama.
Exactly. Their myths provided explanations not just for nature, but for human successes, failures, conflicts. It was a complex reflection.
So this polytheistic model, lots of gods for different jobs, worked for a very long time. It helped manage local fears, local environments.
For millennia, yes. But then something really significant happens. A huge shift in thinking
The move away from many gods.
toward the idea of one.
Mm.
One supreme, universal God. This is a massive paradigm shift.
And this is where we see the emergence of monotheism, the foundation for Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Religions that dominate globally today.
Correct.
Why was that shift so revolutionary? I mean, beyond just reducing the number of gods to keep track of?
Oh, it changed everything. Social structure, individual identity, morality. Think about it. Polytheism was often localized. You moved somewhere else, maybe you adopted the local god.
Right, add them to your list.
But monotheism introduced this concept of a single, overarching moral authority. This god wasn't just in charge of your river or your harvest. This god was in charge of the entire cosmos.
Wow.
And this god demanded total allegiance, universal laws, not just local customs,
So it moves beyond just appeasing nature.
towards adhering to a universal moral code. It introduces the idea of a covenant, a binding agreement between God and humanity. Yes. And that centralizes divine authority, which often goes hand in hand with centralizing human political authority too. It creates the need for standardized ethical systems that apply everywhere.
And it changes how you see yourself, presumably.
Profoundly. The idea of an individual soul accountable to a single universal judge that fundamentally alters concepts of personal responsibility, worth, and destiny.
So belief starts as maybe a way to handle fear, but it evolves into this complex structure for building societies, defining morality on a much bigger scale.
It becomes deeply structural, yes, foundational.
Okay, so we've seen the origins, this move from many gods to one. But before we get into the why we still cling to this idea today, maybe we should map out the different ways people actually conceptualize God, because it's not a single idea, is it?
Not at all. The term God covers a huge range of concepts. Humans trying to grapple with that ultimate mystery have come up with a really diverse landscape of belief systems.
All right, let's sketch that landscape. We've touched on polytheism, lots of gods, often linked to functions or nature. Think ancient Rome or Hinduism with its vast pantheon.
Right.
And we've covered monotheism, one single, all-powerful God, like in Judaism, Christianity, Islam. That's a dominant model.
Very dominant. But then things get philosophically interesting.
How so?
Consider pantheism. This is quite different. It basically says God is the universe, not a separate creator, but the totality of existence itself.
So God is in the tree, the star, the river, everything is divine.
Exactly. The divine is inherent in all matter, all energy.
Yeah.
The spiritual goal isn't relating to a person like God, but recognizing this underlying unity in everything.
That feels very different from the Abrahamic idea of God creating the universe from outside, so to speak.
It is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And there's a related but distinct idea, panentheism. Subtle difference, but important.
Okay, what's that?
Panentheism suggests God is in the universe, yes, but also transcends it. God is bigger than the universe, contains it, but isn't limited to it.
So both present within and separate from creation.
Correct. And psychologically, that difference matters because panentheism still allows for a God who might intervene or have a personal relationship with individuals, whereas pure pantheism usually doesn't lean that way.
Interesting distinction. Okay, what else is on the map?
Well, there's deism. This was big during the Enlightenment. Think of God as the ultimate cosmic architect or clockmaker.
The one who designed and built the universe, set up the laws of physics.
And then step back, wound it up and let it run according to those perfect rational laws. No interference, no miracles, no daily meddling.
So why was that appealing?
It addressed the problem of evil or suffering. If God is all good and all powerful, why do bad things happen? The deist answer. God created a perfect system that runs itself. Suffering is just part of the mechanics, not divine whim or cruelty. God isn't intervening for good or ill.
That completely changes prayer then. You're not asking for help.
You're seeking understanding or acceptance of the natural, rational order God established. It's a very different relationship.
Okay, so we have many gods, one God, God is the universe, God in the universe, God the detached creator. What about rejecting the whole idea?
Crucial part of the landscape. We absolutely have to include atheism, the positive rejection of belief in any gods, and agnosticism.
Which is more about uncertainty. Like, we can't know for sure if God exists.
Exactly. The position that the existence of God is either unknown or fundamentally unknowable.
Now, sometimes these are seen as just the absence of belief, but you're saying they're more active than that.
Absolutely. The sources emphasize this. You can't really be an atheist or an agnostic
Uh,
without engaging deeply with the very idea of God that permeates culture and history.
it's a response to the question.
Precisely. Rejecting God, doubting God,
Yeah.
these are still positions taken in response to that same fundamental human mystery. Are we alone? What explains existence? Atheism and agnosticism are attempts to resolve that mystery by demanding empirical evidence or focusing entirely on human agency and understanding.
So the whole spectrum, belief, disbelief, doubt, it's all part of humanity grappling with uncertainty and the search for meaning.
Exactly. It's all about how we choose to define our relationship with the great unknown.
Okay, let's make that shift now. We've seen the history, the different types of belief. Let's get inside the human mind. If God started as an explanation for thunder, what's the psychological role today? Why does the idea still feel so necessary for so many people?
Right, we're moving from external explanations to the internal landscape. And psychologically, the benefits seem immense, primarily tackling two of the hardest parts of being human, uncertainty and death.
Let's start with uncertainty. Just everyday life is unpredictable, right? Your health, your job, the safety people you care about.
And bigger things too. War, climate change, economic instability. Life feels inherently unstable, chaotic even.
So how does belief help with that?
It offers a powerful antidote, the idea that there's a bigger plan. Even if you can't see it or understand it, there's an underlying purpose or order.
So it provides meaning, even in suffering.
Yes, that's key. When something bad happens, instead of it being just random, meaningless awfulness, belief allows you to reframe it. Maybe it's a test. Maybe it serves some divine purpose we don't grasp. That sense of meaning, even if the meaning is painful, is often psychologically easier to handle than pure, pointless chaos. It offers comfort through assigning cause.
Okay. And the other big one, mortality, the fear of death.
Probably the biggest existential burden we carry. As far as we know, we're the only species acutely aware of our own inevitable end.
That's terrifying. You really think about it.
It is. And belief in God, almost universally across religions, offers a direct psychological balm for that terror.
Through the afterlife.
Whether it's heaven, reincarnation, merging with a cosmic source, the core idea is that death isn't the absolute end. It's a transition. It provides narrative continuity for the self, for consciousness, for the soul.
It softens the blow of oblivion.
Dramatically. It takes the ultimate finality and transforms it into just another chapter, relieving the immense psychological pressure of knowing you will cease to exist.
That's a huge function. But belief isn't just about personal comfort, is it? It plays a big social role, particularly around morality, the moral imperative.
Yes, this is really significant. The argument goes, without a divine lawgiver, where do absolute morals come from? Morality could just become relative. What's right for me might be wrong for you, or what's right today might be wrong tomorrow.
Which could lead to social chaos?
Potentially, yes. It makes building trust and cohesive societies much harder. God, in many traditions, provides that fixed point, that absolute source of right and wrong, a universal moral compass.
But don't the sources also bring up challenges to that idea, like the Euthyphro dilemma?
Plato. Yes, that's the classic philosophical tension. Is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it's inherently good?
If it's good just because God says so, could God command something awful and make it good? That seems arbitrary.
That's the worry. But if God commands it because it's already good, then goodness exists independently of God, potentially making God unnecessary for morality.
It's a philosophical knot.
It is. But psychologically, the need seems to be for that certainty, that reliable guide, regardless of the philosophical underpinnings. It provides social cohesion and personal relief from ambiguity.
And it's interesting how even secular ethics often echo religious values.
Absolutely. Concepts like universal human rights, inherent dignity, compassion, social justice, many of these has deep roots in religious thought, even if they're now framed in secular terms. The structure of the moral imperative often remains.
Okay, moving beyond morality, what about just belonging, community and belonging?
Hugely important, especially today, with increasing reports of loneliness and social fragmentation. Religion, particularly organized religion, provides instant community.
Through rituals, services.
Rituals, shared prayers, festivals, life cycle events like weddings and funerals. These things create strong social bonds. Being part of a faith community connects you to a network, a kind of extended family, that goes beyond your immediate circle. It combats isolation.
And there's something deeper too, isn't there? That feeling of transcendence and awe we mentioned earlier.
Yes, that profound feeling of being part of something vastly bigger than yourself. Standing by the ocean, looking at the stars, even listening to certain music.
You feel small but connected.
Exactly. Psychologists point out that humans seem to actively crave that experience of awe, of stepping outside the boundaries of the everyday ego. God, or the divine, often becomes the ultimate symbol or focus for that need for transcendence.
It fills a space that pure rationality might leave empty.
It can, yes.
Yeah.
And wrapping all this together is the idea of belief as emotional armor.
Emotional armor, how so?
Well, studies cited in our sources suggest that people with strong religious or spiritual beliefs often cope better with stress, trauma, and loss.
They're more resilient.
It seems that way.
Mm.
The belief system provides a framework for understanding hardship, a consistent source of hope, maybe a feeling of not being alone in their suffering, and often a sense of ultimate justice or resolution. It acts like a psychological buffer.
Even if, logically, they might have doubts sometimes.
Even then, the functional benefit, the way it helps people endure adversity, seems significant. It's not necessarily about intellectual certainty, but about emotional resilience.
Okay, so belief acts as this psychological framework, this emotional armor. That makes sense. But when do we tend to reach for it most urgently? It's not always a constant hum, right? It seems to spike.
Absolutely. The need often becomes most acute precisely when our own systems, our human attempt at control, break down.
You mean like in really bad situations?
Exactly. Think about moments of crisis and tragedy, war zones, natural disasters, facing a terminal illness.
The foxhole conversion idea?
That's part of it. When human institutions, medicine, government technology hit their limits and say, we can't fix this, prayer often surges. It becomes a primal reflex.
So belief functions as a kind of last resort.
In many ways, yes. When you feel completely helpless, when all earthly options are exhausted, the spiritual realm offers the only remaining avenue for hope, appeal, or even just solace. It's a psychological safety net against utter despair.
And it's not just in huge disasters, right? Even with all our science, there are still fundamental questions it can't answer. The gaps left by science.
Definitely. Science is incredible at explaining how things work, how stars form, how evolution operates, how the brain processes information.
But it struggles with the why questions.
Exactly. It can describe the Big Bang in amazing detail, but it can't really tell us why there was a Big Bang in the first place, or why the universe has laws that allow life to exist at all.
The ultimate question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Physics doesn't seem to have an answer for that.
It doesn't. And in that gap, where empirical science falls silent on ultimate origins and purpose, the idea of God offers an immediate, comprehensive explanation. It provides meaning where science provides mechanism.
And belief also seems crucial for dealing with very specific kinds of personal emotional pain.
Yes, absolutely. Think about intense loneliness. For someone feeling profoundly isolated, maybe elderly, maybe bereaved, prayer or a sense of divine presence can feel like a genuine connection.
A conversation partner who's always there.
And who's non-judgmental. It offers a form of guaranteed companionship when human connection feels absent or unreliable.
What about guilt? That can be incredibly isolating too.
Cripplingly so. Mistakes we've made, ways we've hurt others, that weight can be immense. Many religions offer mechanisms for dealing with this confession, repentance, and crucially, the concept of divine forgiveness.
A way to wipe the slate clean.
Essentially, yes. It provides a path to self-reconciliation that might be harder to achieve through purely secular means like just apologizing or trying to do better. It offers a sense of absolute absolution.
And finally, maybe the most pervasive pain, hopelessness. When life just feels empty, pointless.
When meaning evaporates, belief can step in there and instantly restore a sense of purpose or context. Suffering might be reframed as a test, part of a larger journey, necessary for spiritual growth, or simply endured with the promise of future reward or peace.
It provides a narrative when the current story feels unbearable.
Precisely. And the sheer power of this need, how deeply it seems to be embedded in us. It's highlighted by that phenomenon you sometimes hear about.
Which one?
Even people who identify as lifelong Convinced atheists.
Hmm.
In a moment of sudden extreme terror, like a car crash about to happen, or falling,
They might cry out.
they might reflexively whisper or shout, "Oh God," or "Please God." It's like a subconscious, pre-rational plea.
Wow, like a default setting kicking in under extreme pressure.
It suggests that the emotional architecture for seeking transcendent help in ultimate moments might be incredibly deeply wired, regardless of our conscious philosophical commitments, a kind of primal safety valve.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. We've tracked belief from explaining nature to being this deep psychological tool, but now, we live in the 21st century. We have AI, we're mapping the genome, we're exploring Mars. The argument you often hear is, science is explaining more and more, so surely the need for God is fading away. We just don't need that explanation anymore?
Right, that's the common narrative. Science replaces superstition.
So, what's the reality? Does the persistence of spiritual searching today tell us something different?
I think it tells us that the science replaces God. Argument misunderstands the kind of needs God fulfills. Science is brilliant, powerful, essential,
Yeah.
but it operates on a different level than the search for ultimate meaning, purpose, and comfort.
So science doesn't actually eliminate the need for God because it's answering different questions.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
Let's look at the specific limitations of science that our sources highlight, even today.
Okay.
First, as we touched on, there's the limit of origin and causality. Science can trace the universe back to the Big Bang, explain the how. But the fundamental why something rather than nothing, why these particular laws of physics, remains outside its scope.
The ultimate metaphysical question is still there.
Still there. Second, the mystery of consciousness. We're making huge strides in neuroscience, mapping brain activity. But the subjective experience of being you, that feeling of awareness, the hard problem of consciousness. Science describes the correlates, the brain states, but can't fully explain the experience itself.
It can tell us what the brain is doing when we feel love or see red, but not what love is subjectively or why red feels like red.
Exactly. And this ties into AI, actually. We can build machines that simulate intelligence, make decisions, even learn. But does that machine feel anything? Does it have subjective awareness? We don't know. And science struggles to even frame that question empirically.
It remains a philosophical puzzle.
It does. And third, a really big one, the moral gap. Science is fundamentally descriptive, not prescriptive.
Meaning?
It can tell us how the world is. It can describe the consequences of actions, pollution, cooperation, violence. But it cannot, from its own resources, tell us what we should do. It can't derive an ought from an is.
So science can tell you how to build a bomb or how to cure a disease, but not whether you should.
Precisely. It doesn't provide an inherent value system. Why is compassion better than cruelty? Why is justice a goal? Science can observe that societies with certain values might function better, but it can't prove those values are intrinsically right.
So even the most rational, science-based person still needs to get their core values from somewhere else.
They do. And often, if you trace those values back, fairness, equality, human dignity, care for the vulnerable, you find they have very deep roots in religious and philosophical traditions.
Even if people don't consciously recognize that connection.
Often, yes. Concepts we take for granted in secular humanism, for example, are often reworkings or secularizations of ideas refined over millennia within religious frameworks. The ethical structure persists, even if the divine authority figure is removed.
So what we're seeing isn't necessarily the disappearance of the spiritual need in the modern age?
But perhaps a shift in form, not need. The underlying human requirements haven't vanished. They're just being expressed differently or seeking fulfillment in new places.
So as traditional organized religion might decline in some areas.
The impulse finds other outlets. People still seek transcendence, meaning community, ways to cope with mortality.
Can you give some examples of these sort of secular replacements?
Sure. Look at the intense focus on meditation and mindfulness practices, often stripped of religious doctrine, but still aimed at achieving altered states of consciousness, inner peace, a sense of connection, fulfilling some of the same roles as prayer or contemplation.
Okay. What else?
Think about certain forms of deep ecology, or even just a generalized reverence for the universe or nature or energy. This can function very much like a pantheistic awe, finding the sacred in the cosmos itself, rather than in a personal deity.
A sense of connection to something vast and meaningful?
Exactly. And tackling mortality. Look at movements like transhumanism. The ambition to use technology, genetic engineering, AI, mind uploading, to overcome aging, disease, and ultimately death itself.
Wow, that's like a technological quest for immortality.
It's essentially the same goal as many religions defeating death but seeking salvation through code and biotech instead of faith and divine grace. It's trying to solve the same existential problem with different tools.
That's a really striking point. The idea that technology itself can become the new God that promises to deliver us from the very vulnerabilities, death, uncertainty that traditional belief systems were designed to help us manage.
It highlights how fundamental that search for meaning, connection, and continuity beyond death really is. It seems to be part of the human condition, whether we're holding a stone tool or a smartphone. The need persists.
Wow, okay, we've covered a lot of ground. From those very first attempts to understand thunder and lightning through polytheism to the huge shift towards monotheism and universal law.
Right, structuring societies.
And right up to today, understanding belief as this incredibly complex psychological mechanism, this emotional armor, this moral compass, this source of community and meaning.
And the synthesis really seems clear from the sources. This persistent, enduring need for God, or at least the idea of God, appears deeply rooted in fundamental human requirements.
Needs that science, for all its power, doesn't seem to fully satisfy?
Exactly. The need for comfort when facing chaos and uncertainty. The need for a shared moral framework to hold communities together. The need for belonging to combat isolation, that profound desire for transcendence, to connect with something bigger.
And maybe most fundamentally, the need for a story, a meaning that helps us confront our own mortality.
The idea of God, in its various forms, has historically been the most efficient and comprehensive way humans have found to address all of those deep needs simultaneously. It's the ultimate cohesive narrative.
It gives shape and sense to the often messy and frightening experience of being human.
It does. And maybe, connecting this all together, the ultimate question isn't the one we usually ask, does God exist?
Right.
But perhaps, can humanity exist? Can we thrive, stay sane, maintain cohesive societies without the idea of God, or without finding some other equally powerful way to fulfill those same fundamental needs?
That's a huge question for the future, isn't it? If traditional structures fade, what fills that gap? Will the replacements be as effective as stabilizing?
It's uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, and this is something the sources implicitly suggest, needing God, or needing that framework for meaning, isn't a sign of weakness or irrationality.
What is it a sign of, then?
Perhaps it's simply a sign of being human, profoundly human, defined by our unique awareness of our existence, our capacity for awe and wonder, our fear of the unknown, and our relentless, unshakable drive to find a story that makes sense of it all.